Yep, and we're up and running. Hi everybody. The Art Lexcia here is Wesley Pepper. This is episode 141. And if you're in the southern hemisphere in the world, we in early spring or in autumn. Autumn. It's actually quite lovely outside. So yeah, that's nice. So anyway, just before I get into my guest today, guys, remember I'm still working on the African Genius podcast with Uncle Asa. We actually record something new coming soon, which I'm looking forward to. So look out for that. I'll definitely be announcing that on my social media pages and whatnot. And there's also Junado Talks Football and The Political Animal, which is another collaboration I'm working on. As you know, we've got the SA elections coming up, I think actually in a few days time, to be honest. So lots of really crazy stuff to talk about there. So look forward to that. And I guess that sorry about the dogs. I actually kept them quiet. I wanted to turn off the volume here on my side, but I guess that won't help. So just sorry about the dogs. Anyway, man, let's get into my let's get into my guest today. I'm talking. Hold on 1 second. I've gotta go and shout. Just give me one. I had to go. I had to go and be a dog owner now. Anyway, guys, welcome. And I'm talking to David Mann today. He's an art writer, and art critic. Are you an art critic as well?
Yeah, sometimes, most times.
Okay, interesting. So a lot of stuff to get into. So we were talking about his short story anthology Once Removed, also published by Botsotso, and they are friends of this channel. So much love to Botsotso, Cabello, and everybody else working on that. So my brother, first and foremost, good morning, welcome.
Morning, Wesley. Thanks so much for taking the time and for having me on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being patient.
And big love from Botsotso as well. We're huge fans.
Yeah. Same here. I grew up on the Botsotso Gestures catalog. To be fair, and I think I've said this a bunch of times on this platform, very influential in my life. I was influenced by. I didn't even know where to start. Like a whole bunch of stuff, especially the approach to writing, their writers. So I'm a huge fan and much love to that. My brother, as I said just before we recorded, there's a lot of stuff I want to get into here. Once Removed, reading up, the blurb about it. It seems like you've got a very let me just say interesting opinion about the arts industry in SA. So let's just start from the beginning and tell us a little bit about the book. Tell us a little bit about the short stories, just give us an overall theme and we'll unpick it bit by bit.
Sure. The book, maybe a bit about my background in writing. I think the book, I always make sense of the book as emerging out of that. Not because I like talking about myself, but it's how I make sense.
This is the
of the book. True. So I've been writing about art, visual art and performance, specifically for sort of the past more than 10 years now. And it's what I do every day. Every day of my life I'm writing, thinking about looking at art, or in a gallery, in a theater, in conversation with artists, and it's kind of shaped my life, I think, for the past, like I say, more than a decade now. There are parts of the art world, we tend to call it a world, as if it's its own sort of thing, separate from the rest of the world. I have thoughts about that, but I also understand why we do call it the art world. Because it does a lot of the time feel like it has its own set of rules and politics and ways of navigating the world. And parts of this world are incredibly beautiful and help me make sense of myself in the world and what it means to be alive right now in the world. Other parts of the art world are incredibly frustrating and they'll break your heart.
Yeah.
And when I started writing the stories in this collection, I was at a point where I think I sort of was really frustrated, but also quite worn down by being a kind of art critic in South Africa. It's a really precarious position. It's not an easy job because, on a very basic level, there's just not a lot of opportunities to write about art on a kind of sustainable level. But also, yeah, there's a lack of platforms. There's a lack of, I suppose, support, critical engagement. There's a lot that you're up against as a person in the arts in South Africa. You'll know this as well, Wesley. But
Absolutely.
yeah, so I was in that moment. I was in that funk, and just like, oh man, yeah, and felt like I was approaching some sort of critical moment of or crossroads moment. Like, do I throw in the towel and just, I don't know, start writing, become a copywriter,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I had seen this master's program at Fits in creative writing. I had been writing creatively for a number of years, but not publishing that much. Mostly editing fiction. I ran a small kind of indie zine with some friends, and we published art and short stories and poetry. And a kind of friend and mentor of mine, I just sort of ran it by him. He's an art critic that I admire and kind of look up to hugely. And I said, listen, I'm at this point. I don't know what to do. But I'm also considering doing this creative writing masters. And he just sort of said, look, without any kind of certainty, just see what it does for your writing. It doesn't have to become anything. It doesn't have to answer any kind of great question. Just do the creative writing thing and see what it does for your writing. So I did. I started in 2020. Then 2020 happened. And next thing I knew, I was
Yeah.
doing this master's online. And all of my work sort of dried up as well. The galleries and the theaters closed.
Yeah.
And the silver lining of that is that it was this great moment of stillness and quiet to, I think, really reflect on what my work was in that industry or that world, and also what the role of art was during that moment, which was, I think, a kind of profound one on many levels. But it allowed me this distance, this kind of critical distance, which I think is captured in the collection's title. Not intentionally, this is something I'm realizing in retrospect, but it allowed me to be removed enough from the world that I had become so immersed in to make sense of it in a new way and to fall in love with it again.
Mm.
And all of the stories are short stories about the South African art world. Some of
Yeah.
them are in the galleries and the theaters, others are not at all. So others are just about ordinary people who sort of encounter art in big and small ways, which is sort of I guess one of the main threads of the book is that idea, that's almost catchphrase that we like to say of like art changed my life.
Yeah.
And excuse me, and that's one of the things I was really interested in exploring is in a very serious way, art does change our lives, but it's also become something we say. You see it in the You magazine, it's people ask celebrities like, what film changed your life? And they'll say, oh, I watched June and Tim Chalamet changed my life. So I wanted to take that spectrum of kind of in a really profound way, art changing our lives, but also in a very banal or very silly way, art changing our lives. And along that spectrum, those stories are placed.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. A few things there that resonated. First, it's interesting you're writing like from an artist point of view, and also the public. I think those two views will be super interesting. It'll be interesting to know what your thoughts of that or how you approach that, because those are actually two contrasting worlds. For my listeners, will know that yeah, we don't really have buckets of people pouring into art, especially art exhibitions. Art exhibitions are usually filled with the artists network, few friends and family, and some buyers and patrons and so forth. And You have to really squeeze water out of a rock to get people's opinion, which is sort of outside of that opinion. I've always found that rather frustrating and also quite limiting in art, in making art. It's very, very difficult to get outside, and I think perspective is sort of what drives, or was in theory as opposed to drive it. So I found that very interesting. Another point that you made there about COVID, in code games, everything sort of came to on an ending. It'll be interesting to know what your, and like how you say, you found a form of sense of reflection, and centeredness. That's actually quite interesting because I started this podcast around about that time, and that was consistent throughout. So it's actually quite, and I've actually been documenting that bit by bit over the years to see how COVID has changed artist processes, sort of what they're looking at, what they're not looking at, and versus. So I think those two are really, really interesting. So yeah, man. So just give us some thoughts about like yeah, the contrasting views between the artist and the art. Let's just say the art fan. So what type of things were you looking at? What type of things jumped out at you?
Artist versus like audience. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how did you
Yeah.
sort of like? What are you writing about? What there stood out for you? And yeah,
I had, well, I mean, I had a lot of fun writing the book, and it's like I have a million and one reasons I love short fiction. One of them is that it, like, a book of short stories or just a short story is like a testing ground for play and experimentation. It's like you can commit yourself fully to a short story, but at the same time, you're not committing yourself to a novel, right? You're not
yeah,
writing
yeah,
this
yeah, yeah,
main manuscript that has this one idea. It's like this short, sharp exercise in world building, or like getting into somebody's mind or perspective, or yeah. And it can be up to, 2,000 to 4,000 words, and that's it. That's the experiment. That's the engagement, and I love that. And so yeah, I did 13 of those basically. Some of them are long, some of them are only 3 pages. But each of them was a sort of moment of play for me. Like, how can I play around in the mind of that quintessential, like archetypal old white male critic, like that stuffy, like pompous dude that you've got that idea of, maybe he's even got like a monocle, or like something like that. And that's the opening story, is that, I did dial him back. He's not that stuffy, but he's this kind of middle-aged white dude who like has this inflated sense of self. And yeah, and he carries that attitude into a gallery. He engages with art in a way that ends up blurring his understanding of the art mirrors life sort of binary. And it doesn't end well for him, which was fun.
which
I wanted to poke fun at that kind of person. And then in other stories, I'm writing from the perspective of someone making art, an artist, or somebody who really, really wanted to become an artist, but for various reasons never pursued that path fully. And those were equally playful and experimental for me. It's difficult to say what it revealed for me. I think I've always held this great admiration for people who make art and put it out into the world. And I'm so often in conversation with people doing that. And the vulnerability and the bravery that it requires to open up one's process, one's studio, one's sort of workshop floor and share those things sort of open-heartedly is, it keeps me going, man. I like that we have people in the world who do that kind of just,
Yeah.
keeps me actively involved and in love with the world.
Yeah.
I suppose I want to say the perspectives were very much in the stories were very much informed by all of these conversations I've had over the years with artists, all these interviews, all these reviews I've done, all these profiles I've done on artists. Like all of those components kind of served as not material in the sense of like a character sketch or plot, but a kind of emotional interiority or perspective. Like this is what it really means to put it out on, put it all on the line, you know.
Yeah.
And I think writing from those perspectives, perhaps it has deepened my kind of understanding. And now, obviously, at the end of the process, bringing a physical work into the world and having people speak back to it. I actually have that experience now of what it is to
Yeah. I was gonna say,
to share work.
become a master. Yeah, you sort of become what you're writing
Yeah,
about. Interesting, man. Just a few points. Yeah, it's making a living as an artist. I guess across the continent, to be fair, most of the third world as well. It's probably one of the most bravest things. That's why I salute every single body who does that. I think it's really a monumental thing just to come from the idea to conceptualize it, to making it and putting it out there. It's not easy, and it definitely takes some. I guess you gotta have your brain. You gotta be rewritten in a certain way. You gotta be crazy in a good and in a crazy way. And I guess that's what makes the whole process quite beautiful because most of the artists that I've been dealt with over the years, it works incredibly personal. So you don't have to know the guy personally, that you know everything about him. Or I think that's something. So interesting stuff, man. I was actually looking at the cover. I think I should have started off with that, but anyway, we are here now. The cover looks quite cold. It looks a bit lonely. It looks a bit isolated. Is that intentional? Given that the art is quite vibrant, it's a lot of movement, a lot of color, and so forth. Is there method in the madness?
yeah. I like to believe there's method in the madness. Um, so the cover artwork is a kind of monochromatic oil painting by a painter called Daniel Nell. I wrote on his solo exhibition. I reviewed his solo exhibition back in 2019. And the title of his solo was called Once Removed. It stuck in my head all those years. I just love the kind of wordplay. And that title continues to reveal itself in new ways to me, which is great. But this artwork resonates on a level because initially there's a story, it's the title story of the collection. And this protagonist is this he is a lonely guy. He's this lonely dude living in the city, and a lot of his friends and family have done that. I suppose that common South African thing of let me say common white South African thing, to be honest, of emigrating or TEFLing, teaching English online,
Oh,
going to
okay.
Hong Kong, all of that sort of stuff, that whole thing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then reflecting back these sort of ideas of what a contemporary South Africa is, and he's in it, and he's feeling ambivalent about it, but he's also just this he's this whiny sort of guy. He whines a lot in the story, and he's got a lot of longing and yearning, but it's all misplaced. Anyways, he goes to an exhibition one night in the story, and he sees this painting that speaks to him quite a lot. It kind of resonates immediately on some kind of level. And he finds it very calming. He finds the gallery very sort of overstimulating. It makes him quite anxious. But this painting is like a salve for him, it kind of soothes him. And it's like represents the world for him that he wants to sort of step into. And I partially based the description of that painting in the story on Daniel Nell's paintings. So then it became a kind of obvious choice for the cover. And then once we were designing the book, it kind of just started resonating on many, many levels. So it chimes with the title in that it represents the scene of someone being on the outside looking in. So it's the scene of a group of people inside an apartment or a gallery or something, and there's a conversation happening, there's life and activity happening. But as the viewer, you're seeing that from the outside. And like you say, it's got this distance and this kind of coldness almost. There's like a disconnect. And that kind of critical distance, I think, just spoke to me immediately. And I kind of like that it does that. It does the thing that you don't expect it to do. Or it is, no, let me say this. It's the kind of artwork that you wouldn't think would be on the collection of short stories about art. You would think it is this bold, vibrant kind of oil painting.
Yeah. And I'd like to talk a little bit
this
about
monochromatic thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I sort of see the sort of the conflict that you're trying to build there. Just another point on the cover. Yeah, man. Like I said, art world very vibrant, very also very personal. Given that we don't have the numbers for the likes of the UK. So everybody sort of knows everybody, or a little bit about everybody. I always found that always not necessarily a good thing. I always, anyway, I don't think everybody should know everybody. And there's also because of that, everything is personal. And so the cover sort of like, looks almost at the other side. You mentioned this stereotypical art critic. The part of like doing English abroad is funny. That's clever. I can actually see that. Tell us a little bit about that, man. Or rather, take a step back. Tell us a little bit about the artists who you've written about. Sort of like I'm trying to get into like your taste in art. And what type of art moves you. So yeah, tell us a little bit about the arts that you wrote about. What type of and in being an art critic. Let's start there. I'll get into the art critic thing afterwards.
Cool. These are the artists I've the actual artists I've written about, not the fictional.
No. Leave the fiction for the readers. They can find it out themselves.
Jeez, yeah. No, that list is enormous. I mean, I started some of my first published writing about art was when I was still a student. I studied in Makanda at the university, still known as Rhodes, and they have this publication called The Q, which kind of only happens for that 10 days of the National Arts Festival, which is like this great opportunity because the nation's artists pile into this strange little town full of donkeys and churches, and suddenly it's this like art center. And I was studying journalism at the time. And yeah, I got to review shows as this like 20-year-old, That was some of the earliest writing I did, and it really just it took a hold of me from then, and has never left. When I moved up to Johannesburg, I was at a publication called Between 10 and 5, kind of creative arts platform.
Yeah.
freelancing all over the show, Mail and Guardian, Daily Maverick, Sunday Times. And that, you get dispatched as a writer, as a freelancer. They hit you up and say, look, there's this show or there's this artist studio in this part of town you've never been to. Pull through. We need the story. And so I met so many people that way. I met you for the very first time, Wesley, in 2016, writing for Between 10 and 5. I was covering the Hillbrow Lexcia festival. And you were rocking that mural opposite the Hillbrow Theatre.
Yeah,
I remember chatting with you very briefly. Sure. I think I even snapped some pics. I think I've got a few photos of you in action.
Okay.
But yeah, so I've written, to single out a few artists would be an impossible task, I think. But
very difficult.
It's been visual artists across every kind of medium, and then performers as well, kind of performing artists, musicians. So what I do now and what I've been doing for the past couple of years, in addition to freelancing, is I work as the kind of like in-house writer for a place called the Center for the Less Good Idea, which is based in Maboneng. It's like a performing arts incubator space, where we invite artists in to create short form experimental work that doesn't necessarily have a kind of home or it wouldn't fit easily in conventional theaters or gallery spaces. And we have a lot of fun doing that. And I have a lot of fun writing about that because there's no model for the sorts of work that emerges from that process. So it's always new and exciting. And this is pretty much what I do.
Interesting, man. As you were talking, I was thinking, it's kind of hard to ask somebody like their favorite this, because it's, as you ask, I'm thinking, I get it. That must be difficult to point like such. But here's a point that I would actually want that another thing that I'd like to get to you. And just give me a minute just to build it up. Is the thing about the art critic. So what I'm always interested in, as being an artist myself, is that, like, who's the art critic writing for? So most artists, to be honest, don't really care about who's buying their work as long as the work is sold. They are mostly concerned about like how much they're getting out of it. There's like, you want to obviously sell to certain dealers, buyers, and so forth, because that elevates your work and blah blah blah. You get a price your work but higher. And I think the art critic's got a very interesting voice in that regard there. So that's the first point. So what I want to get into, like, for example, like, are you, for example, like if you're writing for like the Mail and Guardian, they've got a very specific audience, basically like the Daily Maverick, similar. Their audience expect a certain voice. But here's the thing, and this is something I'm quite passionate about, is that is growing new audiences. I think there's a huge market for that. I find that the art market is actually quite suffocating, and it can actually be, and because it's so small, with the include and exclude, that process, I'm very critical on that. My thing is, man, like, when I say who are you writing for, is it your editor that calls the shots? Is it you that call the shots? Yeah, just give us a sort of an overview on that.
Yeah, that's a important question, and one that I try and ask myself on a regular basis. Is like, what is the writing serving? Who is the writing serving? Who is it for? To what end? What is all of this for? That was part of that crisis I had at the end of 2019. I thought that art criticism, art journalism in the country had, for the most part, devolved into sort of fluffy PR promotional writing, which is fine. There's a place for that. We need to celebrate art, and like artists need to be able to use words and language to celebrate their work and promote their work. But I just felt that, I would sort of look out at the landscape of arts media, and this was all I was sort of seeing. I think art writing never does a single thing. I think it changes its function constantly. Primarily, I like to think of the writer as not somebody who's placing value on a work and saying this is successful or unsuccessful. And I don't like to think of them as somebody who is just there to get the word out and say, look, this happened. But I see them as somebody who is an interlocutor, or perhaps a translator. No, translator is not the best term. I think it's somebody that is able to take the complexities at work in an exhibition or a performance and package them in a way that adds meaning and extrapolates meaning, but also puts it in conversation with the world and with the reader. For me, that's always what I'm striving to do is, if I've seen a show and I've just written about what I've seen, this is unsuccessful. It needs to be able to resonate. It needs to have a chime with the reader. It needs to make somebody think like, this is, I didn't see it this way, or this makes sense on a level that has meaning for me. And yeah, because artists are capable of doing this themselves a lot, but it's there's a kind of literacy around art that is lacking globally.
That's another
But then
good point.
exactly as you say, there's this issue of access to art and gatekeeping around art and kind of everything that is part of that commercialized, capitalized art world that is just doing it no favors. And it makes people, I suppose, reluctant or afraid to engage with art. And so if the art writer can help knock down those gates or kind of bridge those gaps, I think that's essential work. And I think that's what we ought to be doing. That's what I try and do with my writing. And then on a very basic level, I just after that work has been achieved, if I'm able to also shout from the rooftops the work of the artists, that's always a bonus, because it's great fun to engage with art that you love.
Yeah, yeah.
Or art, or not even or art that has kind of unsettled you or upset you in a way, or kind of irked you. I love writing about that too, because it reveals something further about you and your engagements in the world. Yeah, long-winded way of saying writing about art has many functions, and I think all of them are quite urgent and important.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
just need more.
That's
We need more people
yes.
doing it. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
yeah. Fully agree. And like you're right. Like the artist, the art critic usually sets the tone for somebody, for the regular, I would say, like a working class guy who comes up to the article and say, "Oh shit, this might actually, intrigue me." That's he's in New York. The writers, I think, is very important there. And yeah, man, about the gatekeeping thing. Yeah, sure. I mean, I can actually have an episode just on that. That's something I'm actually very critical of. I find that art's supposed to be for everybody. Not supposed it is for everybody, but it's not. And even if you look at a space like Maboneng, a gentrified space, I think is the most anti-art like venue, because everything there makes you can't go there just appreciate art. You have to keep spending money in order to appreciate art, and I think that isolates just as like probably 90%, if not more, people. Which is also why I'm very passionate about building this digital sort of platform that has access to anybody. All you need is data on your phone, and not even a lot of data. But
For sure.
that's just a super interesting point that I'd like to, yeah, that we
But
can back. you want to bring up
Totally.
something?
But quickly on that, like one of my, I think, baselines I kind of work from unconsciously when I'm engaging with art is a background in graffiti and public art. So I grew up in Cape Town, and like sort of early mid 2000s, that graffiti scene at the time
Yeah.
kind of was insane. And I used to catch the train to school, and then that kind of vibrant wall along the tracks was covered, man. And it was this kind of roving gallery space for me. I obviously didn't see it that way at the time, but in retrospect, I was seeing art. I was seeing artists at work every single day on my daily commute. And this is a model for art in the world that I really admire. And I think, is as you say, the kind of university educated person versus the kind of so-called working class person, what have you. If if those two people can access or engage art on the same level, that's kind of the ideal, How to achieve that, I
Well.
can't say, but this is what we work toward.
I have a few ideas on that, and we can actually unpack that a little bit. I'd like to also unpack about the marketing of the book, where it's available, and so forth, and like the technical stuff, how people buy it, and all of that. And yeah, we can actually talk a little bit more about the curating. It's just something I'm really passionate about, and I talk about it consistently on this platform. And also AI, I want to get your views on that, but I'll do that sort of towards the end. I think it's the most pressing thing we have in the art world right now, and we definitely don't talk about it enough. But David, the session is coming to an end, my brother. Let me,
Okay.
let's jump. David, just before that will break, I think that point that you raised about commuting to school in the morning and seeing graffiti, that's actually quite that's actually quite a strong story, because you are correct. You're seeing others at work, and you sort of get an appreciation not just of the work but the process. I think how people appreciate art is to understand the process as well. So it's not just a bunch of pot smoking guys just going on a wall. There's some real thought, planning involved in it, and at least we are incredibly talented people. And also, I've um, I've known this through talking to a lot of people. So if they see the artists like bombing the wall, they sort of see, maybe not connected to it, but like they have sort of a personal stake to say, oh, I remember when the artist when it was just an outside line, how does all this beautiful color and meaning, and constantly driving past there, they sort of developed a form of relationship with the work, and that's one of the major things I was so stuck on with street art, and also like installations. I also think public installations is so key there, with the public can actually physically move in there, especially if they can touch it and sort of engage with the artist. I think that breaks down perspectives, because like the point we raised earlier on, about access, which is a major problem. Art is not accessible to anybody. You got to always jump in your car and drive, or you got to look for parking, and then is all these old things, especially like with studios in the inner city. Just one of my previous episodes, we were talking about the Azivenze art studio, and Nolan was taking us through the way they lay this building out is beautiful. You will never say like Bree Street, and all this chaos is just literally a few meters down below. And I think that's part of the reason why I'm really stuck on. I'm really focused on building this platform where we can access these spaces on your device. But anyway, that was just a point I wanted to make. Just to get back into the last point, I want to get your views on it, on being an art critic. And also, just the thing, I'm not saying that you're just an art critic. I just feel that's such a very strong thing that we're talking about. Um, do you feel you have any? I'm putting you on the spot here, and it's sort of intentional. Do you feel you have the power to make or break an artist's career with your pen? And is that something you are conscious of?
No, I don't think make or break. I think that used to be the case, and I think that's still the idea that we have in our minds, also attached to that kind of vision of the critic as this kind of stuffy old person with a monocle. I think today, and this is a huge positive, today there's so many channels and platforms that artists can access to speak on their own work, to share their own work, to unpack it, promote it, what have you. And that becomes a record. I think what used to be the case is that you would have your print media or your broadcast media, you'd have your sustained media channels, pre-social media. And those channels were only, I don't want to say controlled, but the only kind of voices you would hear on those channels were the media workers, were so the critics, right? So what the critics said about the show became the record for that show. If the critics said it was bad, don't go see it. That's the record that remained out there. But today, that's not the case. You can go pan a show and say this is horrible, don't see it. And the artist has their own way of speaking to their audience. But also, just on that, if there's a critic out there writing, "This is a horrible show, don't go see it," that's not really criticism, in my opinion. I mean, that's such a kind of juvenile. I think if there's a show that is deliberately kind of portraying a kind of hatred or violence or something that is unnecessarily destructive in the world, then sure, pan that show. Nobody should go see it. But other than that, the art, art in the world is always worth seeing and engaging with. But in terms of my role, and I suppose speaking to power that the critic holds, that the artist holds, I'm very aware of it. I'm very conscious of what a text does in the world. This is especially important, I think, at places like the National Arts Festival, where you have your kind of main platform with these curated shows. They're like these big professional productions. And then you have your fringe platform, which is like sometimes brand new artists. They're testing ideas out. These are ideas in like all their beautiful sort of infancy, and they're figuring themselves out. And a bad review at that stage, it's not to say that it can change the trajectory of what a work sort of grows into or becomes, but I think it can impact an artist's relationship with that work, and that's an important thing to consider. So yeah, it's something I consider in my writing. But then another thing to consider is that, and again, this keeps threading back into our conversations about access and exclusivity in the art world, but there's a kind of lack of an institutional critique in the art world because the institutions run the show, man. And those absolutely you can critique sort of openly because they can withstand it. And if they're really invested in what they're doing in the world, they will be open to a dialogue about what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. And my review about a show at a big sort of state-funded theater is not going to end that theater's life. It's but it hopefully will get them to listen. Not always the case though, because I remember critiquing a show at one of our theaters here in Johannesburg and then promptly being kicked off the media list after that. But you carry on.
Interesting point. I'm not surprised. Everybody likes to. There's also another critique I have towards art writers is that usually the voice piece of the editor or the person that's paying for the article. Just another point, just from being a visual artist. Yeah, the art critics got some form of power. As you said, it's been dwindled down to the social media. And I actually want to lead to another point on that. Yeah, so the art landscape is changing. It's changing very fast. In fact, post COVID, much faster. Um, I sort of also want to touch on this point here that we can get back to once removed and where it's available and so forth, and a little bit more about the book. Um, that we are moving into. I mean, we're using an online platform to have this conversation now, and these type of platforms blew up during COVID. The arts were sort of forced to move or to rethink how it, how it operates. That only lasted for about 2 years, but if you ask me, I think that was inevitable. Technology is changing the game. Artists have a lot more power now, and we don't really need art galleries anymore. I would like to believe that art galleries is on their way out. There's way more creative and more engaging ways of engaging with your audience these days, and that's all thanks to social media and all these platforms. Um, what I want to get to your opinion of as being a writer is AI. Amen. Sorry, man. These dogs, man. Just bear with me.
Oh, you're still on mute, Wesley.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Cool.
Yeah, I was gonna get your opinion on AI. My thing is that I think it's the most under me, put it like this. I don't think people are talking about it enough. I had a recording last year, the beginning of the year, just before it started, about May, February, March, there about last year. And one of the so these guys also run an art gallery, and they're talking like some of the artists were actually getting a bit nervous. Guys who's making a living off portraits, given that you can just prompt AI now, it can do a portrait for you in a matter of seconds. Um, AI is also replacing. I mean, I'm also using it to edit some of my writing because I'm not a very sharp writer. I'm using it for. There's also other few interesting tools with regards to podcasting production. So my point is that these things have crept in sort of fast, man. Like all of a sudden, if I must close my eyes and say, shit, what did I do before these tools were available? I had to actually apply myself and work harder. It's definitely taking freeing up some time that I have, and it's always a good thing. I think that's always a good thing. So I'm actually saying, trying to give you like both sides of the coin from what I've been discussing on this platform. What's your take on that, my brother? And given that you are, a writer, that's your primary, that's your main skill. Yeah, man. What's your take on that? Where do you see it going? Yeah.
I also embrace both sides, and it's a conversation or kind of, I mean, it's a moment, it's kind of revolution actually, AI, that I'm following with great interest. And I see the potential for a kind of harm or a negative disruption, but I also see the potential for positive disruption. Like you said, it's for many of us, it's sort of back to the drawing board moment, or a kind of more engaged way of working that is like, what am I doing that can be replicated by an artificial intelligence? And what am I doing that can never be, and then you kind of amplify the latter. You amplify those things that are unique to your process and your skill set. And that's a great thing. That's a great exercise. I think I'm more interested in what our response or our engagement to AI reveals about our industries. So it makes sense to me on a level that if you are working as a copywriter, let's say, and you get retrenched because now somebody's like, well, listen, I pay you to write product descriptions for my company, and I can just get AI to do that. Or if you're an illustrator doing commercial portraits or something like that, and now somebody says, look, I've got AI that can do this. I understand that fear, but I think I'm interested in what it points to, and what I'm seeing it point to so far is back to our earlier point again, is that there's a crisis of commercialization in the art world that has so strongly shaped the way we work and the way we kind of see ourselves as artists and people who create or who work creatively in the world, that we're sort of beholden to these things, you know. It's hard to innovate, it's hard to amplify or kind of engage your process differently when you are beholden to this thing of, I need to write copy for a living, I need to produce portraits for a living. And in many ways, this does feel unfair. It is unfair.
It is.
And I think it feels hopeless at times. But I try not to, I try and push past that. So this is not a clean answer for you, but I think I don't know if there are answers yet to where this is
an
going,
honest
but I'm
answer.
interested. Yeah.
It's an honest answer.
I know, I just know as a writer, sorry, Wesley, as a writer doing the kind of writing I do, I've always felt quite confident in, look, the stuff I'm writing about and the ways I'm writing about it it's kind of, you can't replicate that, at least yet.
Yet.
I don't know in a couple of years where the technology will be at, but right now, yeah, I'm confident that as artists we push our processes and abilities to a point of kind of pure novelty. You know, it's irreplaceable what we do. This is, and again, actually, this is the point I'm actually trying to work towards. I'm interested in what AI and our engagements and fears of it and all of this reveals about the inherent bottom line value of artists, cultural workers, people who make things in the world, people who make meaning in the world. Perhaps it's a bit idealistic, but the hope is that this kind of moment of AI in the arts reveals to us just how vital art makers are,
Interesting
how
point.
essential we are.
Yeah. One of the a very good friend of mine, a writer, Pilani, we spoke a few weeks ago, and he said that like art is the highest form of human achievement. You don't, to be creative is the highest. You can put that probably with sports as well. You just can't replicate that. And just another point, you're saying like the uncertainty about the future that is felt consistently through everybody. I've just like 100%. Everybody's very uncertain. So I totally get that. And just to add on to that, there is no answer or that. I guess in the future I should probably reshape that question because I can't expect anyone to give an answer because nobody knows. But it's just fascinating for me how much change has gone on post COVID, and all these things. Creators obviously processing that, and I just find that process fascinating. Just a closing point on
It's
on
funny you
AI.
ask, because I mean, oh, sorry, I
No,
keep
continue,
cutting you off.
continue,
Yeah, but
continue. Go over.
it's interesting because last night, for the first time, I was like, Meta, which is consolidated WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, all of that, has now introduced that in the search bar.
Yes,
It has that Meta
yes,
AI thing.
yes, yes.
So for the first time, I was playing around with it, and just ended up having like a full-on conversation with this AI. Just kind of poking fun and like interested in how it did mimic a kind of human engagement. But for the most part, I was really just playing around. But this thing, this conversation you and I are having, I mean, this is irreplaceable, right? You can't fabricate such a thing, and that is art. You can't fabricate the kind of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
connections
I
and
don't
the
think you
meaning
can.
making of art.
creativity involves all these senses, at least my understanding. So sight, smell, touch, speech. I can't, if I'm not missing anyone, but you see, it
Yeah,
incorporates
spirit.
all of that.
Yeah.
I can't see a machine mimic all of that, at least now, because these things are moving. But yeah, my closing point on that is that I just feel we should be talking more about that, and there should definitely be more legislation. Government should definitely pull up their socks, and there should definitely be more, in terms of like who gets to what AI gets to use, what they don't get to use, and artists still needs to be compensated. If you're going to use sample any of my stuff, I need to get paid for it, and there needs to be a law for that. And I think our voices should be collective and strong about that. And now, as in like today, this Saturday morning, now we should be. We can't wait on this, and that's why I'm sort of prompting all my guests, and I'm going to be doing it throughout 2024, and maybe even above, and to see which direction this goes, because I definitely want to talk with more people who's engaging in that, especially on writing the laws. But yeah, man, we can go on and on and on and on about that. But I sort of wanna, bring it back to once removed. Yeah, just to recap. Firstly, fascinating, my brother. Thank you for that. Like, I don't usually come across people actually writing about the art itself, about the there was a metaphor. It sort of relates to your cover, sort of, so to speak. There was one critic that went to the Joburg Art Fair a few years back, and we're talking about the air conditioning being cold, so the environment itself was unfriendly. It took you 5 minutes or so, and that's something I've experienced myself. It wasn't friendly. It wasn't warm, and that sort of like leads to the isolation and exclusivity of the arts, which I'm highly, highly critical of. And yeah, so it's very refreshing. Like I have somebody write sort of from both sides. I think that's really cool. So yeah, man, just tell us a little bit about more the marketing behind Once Removed. In other words, book launches, where the book's available, etc., etc.
Well, first of all, I didn't think I would have this much fun marketing a book or like bringing it out into the world.
Yeah, explain that.
Whenever I have to sort of celebrate my own work or even talk about myself, I just sort of shrink into the corner. But to my surprise, I really enjoyed it because I think it's ended up drawing on a lot of like my kind of inherent skill set. So I kind of help. Yeah, I work with artists to put their intentions into words and to communicate that on a sort of clearer level. And I can now do that with my own book. I have a lot of I have knowledge of the media industry and how that works. I have a lot of editors that I have come to know over the years, so I'm sending it all out to them. Just reaching out to people has been a really beautiful experience because the response has been warm and generous and yeah, open-hearted and all of those beautiful things. So it's been fun. But yeah, marketing the book. I did my very first kind of moment of this book in KZN in Durban for the Time of the Writer Festival. That was back in
Yes.
March. I was on a panel about short fiction, and then I had a similar moment at the Wits Writing Festival. But the main Joburg launch is going to be at Love Books in Melville on the 5th of June. Invites are going out soon for that. And there'll be many more moments. I think because of the form of the book and the content of the stories, it has this potential to bridge worlds really nicely, and I'm excited about that. So partnering with visual artists, performance artists, and seeing how we can activate their
Interesting.
practice through
Interesting.
the book,
Yes.
because this is the thing. Writing is not the solitary thing. Maybe the act happens in a room or in a coffee shop or wherever you do your thing.
Mm.
But the long view of the process of writing is it's collaborative, because you're in conversation with the world, you're in conversation with people. And I'd like the second part of this book's life, which is now sort of bringing it out into the world, to be as collaborative as possible. I'll do the book launch, the conventional book launch at the bookstore, because that has its place and it's fun and exciting. But I don't just want to do that. I want to draw on all of the things that excite me about the art world and see what's possible. I've also got a whole lot of stickers printed that I'm gonna stick up and bomb up around the city. So keep an eye out for those.
No, that's a very effective way on bus stations, bus stops around Maboneng, Newtown, for example, Melville. No, it's very old school, but like it's effective. It's effective. It's we did this thing a few years back. Not every owner liked it, but if you go to a urinal, you always put it like just there, like eyeliner. You can't miss it, but like not every owner was very keen when they found out. Not everybody was always so happy about that. But yeah, stickers is very effective. And it's so interesting. Are you saying like you collaborate with other artists? I think that's very cool. That's also a way of engaging people with the actual content of the book. That's quite cool. That's really cool. Please keep us up to speed with that, especially if you got video. I mean, like my channel, YouTube is this like content eating monster. It loves content, and the more content you feed, the more your thingy grows. And I'll definitely push you on that platform over there as well. And I also like to see how people engage with everything, because that on its own is fascinating to me. Is there any what's this e-commerce websites? Like I know Botsotso as a website where they sell books off on their books. Is there any websites like that where your book is available?
Right, yeah. So you can order via Botsotso. You can go onto the website. I think it's botsotso.org or botsotsopublishing.org, one of the two. And other than that, it's in sort of most independent bookstores. So in Johannesburg, that's Love Books, that's Bridge Books, Circle Capital. Cape Town, it's Clarkson Book Lounge. Durban, it's in Ike's. I'm a big fan of independent bookstores. So if it forms part of that ecosystem, I'm very happy. So please go visit those bookstores and,
can you just
buy lots of books.
Keep the cover up in front of the camera so we can just catch. There we go. Okay,
there you go.
For that. Yeah. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
So you say it's available on all those platforms. Are you selling it on your own? For example, like the old metaphor, like out of the back of your car. So do you know?
I'm doing that as well.
That type of thing. Yeah,
so you can hit me up on Instagram. You can DM me. d.e.man, I think, is my handle.
I was going to ask that. Is there any handles, social media handles that, as you know, that's people can get hold of you on?
Yeah, I'm just simple, David Mann, on all those platforms.
Okay, now fantastic, David Mann. As I said, like this is really cool. This is really cool. I'd actually love to read some of the stuff, and I would definitely love to engage a little bit more on that. You say your main thing is on the 5th of June. I actually made a point of that. I think around about that time, that's a month from now, I'll do some other promoting around this episode as well. And on the description of the episode, I'll put in all the websites, and so if any of the listeners can just scroll down and click, we can help each other grow. And just moving forward, sort of in closing, I mean, it's way too early to ask, but I've noticed that different people, operate differently. I mean, it's just published, you're obviously marketing. Are you already thinking of another book, or are you just still focused on getting one sort of moved out there?
I appreciate this question because like a few people have asked it, and it is initially it's like, yo, I've just finished this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me live. But it also it's encouraging because I think it indicates that yeah, people want more, which is always a great thing to hear. I think what I've been saying to people is that as like the subject matter of this book, which is fiction about the art world that in a sort of generative way that helps us make sense of the art world, poke a little fun at it, make meaning out of it. That feels inexhaustible to me. So I can write a million more stories in this universe, in this world. And I'm not done with short fiction. I don't think I'll ever be done with it. So there'll always be new short stories, but I would also like to try my hand at something longer form, perhaps a novella or a novel in the same world. We'll see. I'll let you know when I get there.
Please do, please do. Yeah, man. In closing, man, like I find building these online. Um, I'm actually building an app where we are. I'm actually partnered with another group of guys that's doing it. We're actually close to finishing, to be honest. Where we want to have everybody on one platform and have these virtual rooms. You can enter and talk to the artist, but it must be all available off your device. Very quick and easy. So the functionality is always so. It's always interesting for me to find out by other writers and artists like who they selling to and how they're engaging with the audience. I find that whole thing fascinating. And like we mentioned about AI, my thing that I always tell everybody is like I'm just trying to collaborate with it as much as I can, just to understand where the limitations of it and so forth. And I want to partner with other writers and other partners around that to see how else we can use it because it's happening. This thing is happening. It's not going anywhere. But yeah, that's it, man. David, thanks for coming, man. Thanks for being patient with the scheduling. I appreciate that. And as I said, I'll push something on the 5th of June with regards to your book, definitely. I'll publish this episode as next week, Friday. And I usually wait about a week and I chop it up into about 5 or 6 shorts, depending on a bunch of things. And I publish that the following week. And that's also a very way of getting new listeners. And I'll let you know what all of that line was. And yeah, thanks for coming through, my brother. Um,
Amazing. Wesley, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate this. And thank you for these chats, man. It set a good tone for the day.
yeah, same here,
But
same
yeah, I
here, same.
appreciate it, man.
Thank you, man. And yeah, to my listeners, if you guys found any value in the content, please smash that like and subscribe button. It's just me, and I appreciate any support. There's no budget and blah 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 blah. But there is method in the madness, and we are working towards something. So, David, man, thanks a lot, my brother. Check out Once Moved Up. Put away all the details in the description over there. So, if there's anything else, you can find it out there. My brother, enjoy the rest of your Saturday afternoon, and I will be in touch.
You too, man. Thank you.
One love,
Chat
brother.
soon.